Here we are, Clay, to talk about the seventh, which continues the long tradition of Star Trek making every accountant go crazy by misnumbering something and then having to realize that you've actually misnumbered something and it means something tremendously different. So in the most famous example is The Wrath of Khan, where SETI Alpha 5 is not actually SETI Alpha 5 or whatever. SETI Alpha 6 by mistake. And I guess it goes towards highlighting the issue with naming in general in Star Trek and stuff like that, where the number, it's just the star system and then the number of the planet, which I guess can lead to a lot of accidents going down the line. The seventh doesn't deal with that, though.
As you can see from that one example, there's a wealth of examples of that we can dig into. We could do a whole podcast on that. What episode is this the seventh episode of the season, though?
Yep, it is.
Got it right there.
That's how you remember this one. When we do our year-end wrap-up and I say, Clay, which one did you like? You're like, I liked the seventh episode.
Yeah, I feel like I would say that completely off, facetiously and not realize that was the actual name of the episode.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll play a clip and then we'll come back and we'll break down the seventh, which is the seventh episode.
They wanted to rehabilitate me. Bring me home. Flatten my forehead and repoint my ears. They wanted to teach me to forget the life they had taught me so carefully how to live. They assumed I had become corrupt, and that left to my own devices, I would remain corrupt.
All right, so the seventh is the seventh episode of the second season of Star Trek Enterprise. It came out on November 6, 2002, written by Rick Berman and Brannon Braga, directed by David Livingston. In-universe date is unknown, but it's 2152. In this episode, T'Pol asks Archer to accompany her on a top-secret mission to capture a fugitive that has eluded the Vulcan High Command for nearly 2 decades. Clay, before we get into this one, I think, when we're in the midst of doing this podcast and there are like 7,000 Star Trek episodes, I think it's easy to get lost in the
7,000
episodes.
7,000.
I think it's easy to get like lost in the morass, basically, like to get lost in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's occasionally important that we recognize where we are in history and things like that.
Seventh episode.
The seventh episode. Not only is this, in my opinion, we'll see what you say, the worst Enterprise episode to date. This if someone put this on a top 10 worst of all Star Trek episodes, I'd say that probably is okay. That's like, it's not a crazy thing for me to say that belongs there. I thought this was awful, and like historically awful for Star Trek. I don't know what you thought about it, though.
I had a really weird roller coaster ride watching this because there were parts of it where I legitimately didn't know how I was feeling about it, because there were parts of it, mostly the Bruce Davison parts, where I was like, I think I actually like this, because he was great.
He's great.
He's
good. All of
his monologues, he was fantastic. He was making me believe every single word of it. But then as I'm watching this, I'm thinking like, why the fuck are they telling this story? Why does T'Pol really need to have this weird dark backstory about killing a possibly innocent man? It seems like she's being written completely out of character. And it's like top to bottom full of one of my least favorite things that I'm sure everybody knows at this point, which is talking about people and events that you don't actually see on screen, as though we're supposed to care about them.
I thought you were going to go with the other Enterprise special, which is a mystery because people don't tell anybody anything. It's a mystery. It's an artificial mystery because no one says what's going on, even though they know what's going on.
It's got a lot of squares filled up on the bingo card of things that I don't like. But for some reason, as I was watching it, I was like, do I really like this? And then about halfway through, I was like, no, I think this is really bad.
I think this is terrible. I thought this is
my favorite part. My absolute favorite thing about this episode, though, is that she's going down to chase this guy with Mayweather, and she sidles up to Archer and is like, can you please come with me? I need someone I can trust, and I just can't.
Not this black guy.
No. And then they just like, the guy that they get is supposed to be this like super criminal or something.
Arms
they
dealer,
just, like,
basically.
they
Yeah.
just like leave him alone with Mayweather. They go and talk for 20 minutes. And yeah, of course they come back and the bar's on fire.
Mayweather is just like, well, what are you going to do? Yeah, I have a lot to say about Mayweather in this. If I was the actor who plays Mayweather, I forget his name at this point. It's something Anthony or something like that. I would be starting to become offended by my usage in this one. He's there's no reason for him to go on this mission at all. And if you're going to write him as if he needs to go, why does he not say anything? All he does in this one is Archer's like, go check the life support. He goes, okay, and he walks off. It's like, go do this.
I thought he was going to stay in the ship or something. I thought he was going to stay in the shuttlecraft, which is why she asked Archer to come.
Right, because she needs someone else to go with her. No, he goes.
Yeah.
But like so many of the shots, it's Archer and T'Pol, and he's just in the background. He's like in bokeh, he's like blurred out because he's not relevant enough to be actually in the shot. And if I was him, I'd just be like, guys, why did you even write me into the scene? Like I'm happy getting paid and not coming in to shoot anything. Like you can continue to do that if you want, but why am I just here?
I've got a bagel over there that's getting cold. If you don't need me, I'm gonna go eat that bagel.
Yeah, the thing about not trusting Mayweather. The only thing that the only thing that I found somewhat interesting about this, and it has nothing to do with the production, because this happened 20 years later. This was weirdly topical in the current debate about police conduct, where T'Pol shoots a guy going for his weapon, and then the other thing is she shoots a guy running away at the very end. That's the thing that happened
Shoots
to that. I forget. Shoots him in the back. I forget that guy's name. There's a lot of people who've been shot in the back by cops, obviously, but like I thought you meant the character in the show. I was gonna they say his name like 1,000 times. No, I don't remember his.
It never sticks because it's someone I've never heard of before.
Oh, it's not Minos, something like this. Minos or something.
Minos, the Hands of Fate, yes.
But that's the only thing that I pulled away from this. I was like, wow, this is weirdly touchy, quote unquote, in today's context, where like if you dig into this, it's just about like the lengths that T'Pol is willing to go, but that's going to tie into more of like Archer's characterization, which makes no goddamn sense in this episode. I'll throw it to you after I say this. So I think the problem with Enterprise for me as a series to this point is that while all the other Star Trek series, the ones we've covered, you can kind of say the problems with them are conceptual on some level. Like TOS when it got bad. Well, TOS is different. TOS when it got bad was because of budget cuts and because people started getting fired in the third season and stuff. And so it all went downhill. They knew the show wasn't continuing, so I don't think people really cared at that point. And TNG, its rough start was its rough patch was in the beginning when they didn't know how to write TNG. They just tried to reboot TOS and it didn't work, just for a combination of stories and characterization, and like modern TV structure didn't work with it. DS9 was bad in the start because they didn't know what they had. They tried to do a TNG thing and it wasn't working, and they took a couple seasons to get into what they wanted it to be. We haven't done Voyager yet, but Voyager is probably the start of this. Enterprise, to me, it's clear that the people leading this production don't care about this series. They just don't care, which makes it very difficult to talk about. And people are going to say that it's like, oh, you guys have a whole bunch of Enterprise to get through. The reason Enterprise to me is so discouraging is because Berman and Braga clearly don't care. They don't care about any of this stuff. Like these stories are so trite and stupid, and it's the bare bones necessity of a story that they've written into a script, and there's nothing on top of it. And that oral history I read, people were just saying like they didn't want to say bad things about Braga, but it's like he was either tired or he's just worn out. He's been doing this for a decade. He doesn't want to do it. But at that point, it's more cynical to me. It's like they just took it as a paycheck. It's like It's not like he could have got a job doing something else. So I don't know why he came back to do this, but I'll throw it to you just by saying that the 7th is a clusterfuck of a script. I don't understand anything that goes on in here. Like I fundamentally understand everything that happens, but at the same time, I don't know why any of the characters are acting this way. I don't understand any of the side plots. I don't understand any of the motivations. I don't understand why T'Pol acts this way. I don't understand why Archer acts the way that he does, and I don't understand why Mayweather is on the mission in the first place. But what say you about this? You said you liked it until halfway, and then something changed for you.
Well, it was the kind of thing where I was like, I guess I've been trying to come into these. Sorry, cough is starting early today. I've been trying to come into these with an open mind because I feel like we've been particularly negative on a lot of them. And so I try to clear the slate every time a new episode starts. And for the first, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Secret plot, gonna go down, do X, Y, and Z, sure. But then, and then Bruce Davison shows up, and I'm like, oh, all right. This the stuff he's saying, he's making me believe it, even though I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah.
And then after that point, once they just start getting into this, and like T'Pol starts shaking like my dog when he's afraid of lightning for no reason, and it just really falls apart. And then the B plot of Trip being the acting captain and not having his lunch interrupted because he can't make any decisions.
Yep.
And pretending to be Archer so he can get a message about a
water polo
match. And then like all of this heavy drama centered on this thing that T'Pol apparently did that we had no idea about, which really has no impact on her character or like, throwing around a lot of names of people we've never seen. It's just like then it turns into like a gun battle at the end because they got to do something, and then ultimately it turns out that she was right to shoot. That you were saying the thing about shooting him in the back being fairly topical. They even go so far as to do the thing where it's like, well, he had a knife, so it's right that we shot him in the back. But the thing about that I found was very funny was like, I assume she shot him with the stun gun.
Right. She didn't do it the first time, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Why? I don't know why they just didn't like the whole time they're arguing about what to do with this guy in my head. I'm just like, Archer, shoot the fucking guy with the stun gun. Knock him. Do something. You're arguing. Like Archer's thing that he's saying to T'Pol is not incorrect. He's like, listen, you're not here to judge this guy. You're just here to get him. Let's get him and go. And she can't even like wrap her brain around that to take that initial step. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure you could dig into like, the ethics of that or whatever. But
why? I guess that's a good jumping off point. I don't understand Archer in this episode, or if I do understand him, he seems totally backwards to what a Starfleet captain is supposed to represent. Why is Archer's position the unnuanced, listen, don't think about what you're doing, just fucking shoot this guy and let's get the hell out of here?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like it, that's not the captain's point of view in these shows, really. Or if it is, it's the other Archer thing of like, he's not wrong. For some reason, he has complete moral clarity about what the right thing to do is. And then he's justified at the end because they uncover, well, the guy actually did have biological weapons, so it's a good thing that we did this. He was just telling a lie. So that undercuts any kind of
biological
empathy.
Weapons that looked a lot like when they opened it, it looked like he just had a mini fridge full of energy drinks.
Right. It was like a gamer's refrigerator or something like that, just filled with Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew code green. Shoot him in the back.
They undermine the Minos character there by flipping it into this thing where it's like, well, actually, he was kind of a shithead. I guess this is the right thing to do. They cement Archer as knowing the right thing to do with no evidence. It's Archer again acting with zero evidence of any kind that he has, and not believing T'Pol. And I don't understand what's served by that. Like the way that this all wraps up, the whole journey has been negated because nothing wrong happened. They were operating in confusion, but they clarified everything by the end, and they did the right thing. So it's like, well, there was no conflict, really. It's just about T'Pol's internal turmoil, but there's so much to complain about. Like, I don't understand T'Pol's characterization here because she's not acting like a Vulcan. I don't understand.
I thought it was going to be that she had some sort of relationship with this guy, because it was like I had just watched the episode of Community where Britta's creepy Carney ex-boyfriend comes back that she can't resist for some reason. So she's like, I need you to lock me in the bedroom and don't let me answer texts from this guy. That's the way that T'Pol was acting. I thought it was going to be like, I can't be left alone with him because he has such sway over me that my bodice just explodes every time I see him. Yeah. But no, it wasn't that. It was something else.
She feels bad about killing that other guy who was going to kill her He was going to shoot her with a gun. I assume not on stun because he is a criminal at that point or something.
Right.
But it's like they don't even the episode in the flashback where she's running through the yellow jungle. It shows the guy going for his gun. So it's not like there's a question of like, is this all in her memory or like, what's the truth here? Archer's apparently seen the flashback. He's like, I'm sure that guy was going for his gun. You were right to shoot him. So
Archer saw the same footage we saw. It's like he was clearly going for his gun, T'Pol. I saw it.
It's just, you know, anything there that you can make interesting. Like it could have been how T'Pol's memory was fuzzy and she doesn't remember. She doesn't know. She doesn't know what the right thing to do is. But they don't do that. They spell everything out for you, and then it all just wipes the board at the end of it.
Well, you know, I think what they were doing was I think they were going for the gray moral area that Deep Space Nine gets into very effectively, but they didn't go all the way with it. They kind of pussyfooted around with it because there's some stuff in there that's actually kind of interesting that in the context of the episode never gets explored and doesn't make a ton of sense. For instance, in addition to all these flashbacks, memories she's having, she's also having flashback memories to some Vulcan ceremony that they performed on her to like wipe the memory of it or wipe the emotions away. And they try to get into this idea about her needing to, like, it was such a traumatic event and Vulcans aren't supposed to have these emotions, so it had to be expunged from her being, but it's coming back and all that kind of shit, which is kind of interesting. Like on a just like a macro level, but
I don't buy it. Like I both think it's not true to what the Vulcans are supposed to be, which is maybe another example of like this series doesn't. If the series is doing something with the Vulcans, it's not explaining that to the audience that that's what's going on. So they come across as she's incredibly emotional this entire time, like the entire episode before she even realizes that there was a mind wipe. She's like shaking. She's like, I gotta get this fucking guy. Like, it's like, what's going on? And the mind wipe ceremony, I understand killing someone is probably a traumatic thing. However, she had been a Secret Service 007 agent into this. This is the first guy she's ever killed. You're telling me they sent some woman out who's like not trained in any of this to hunt down these criminals, and she shoots them and then has a mental breakdown from it? I don't buy that impacts Vulcans that way. Maybe if this was like she accidentally wiped out an entire planet, maybe that's a level of sadness that even would crack like Sarek or something like that. But just one guy who's going to kill you. What are we talking about? It's strange.
It's and like they get into the stuff that Bruce Davidson gives like a couple fairly long monologues. Like I was saying, he really kills it. But you know, as I'm watching this, I'm trying to pay attention to the stuff that he's saying, and I'm like, I don't understand what any of this is taught. Like he was a Vulcan who was a smuggler or whatever, and in order to hide his appearance, he like filed down his ears. And
the Vulcans sent 110 secret undercover Vulcans.
He's underagent. Secret.
So they sent them to this planet to. All of this is far more interesting than what the episode does. So the Vulcans send this secret cabal of Vulcan agents to a planet that they're trying to reform from the inside. So they are violating the Prime Directive, sort of. They knew them, but they're doing some like shady, underhanded political business to sort of bring this planet into line with what the Vulcans want. He got a taste of the criminal life and liked it enough, so he refused to come back. And now the Vulcans have to go hunt down their own agents, and which is what T'Pol was sent there to do. So he's been surgically altered to look like one of these people or whatever. But I
think he did that to himself, though.
Well, I think they all did because all the Vulcans had to go undercover when they were sent to that planet. So,
well, what I was getting to is he starts talking about in his monologue about how they want to take him back and they want to smooth out his forehead and put the points back on his ears and stuff. And I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, the Vulcans want him to be a Vulcan again, which his fake story is more interesting than the real story that happened to him. So if he's like, I don't want to be a Vulcan anymore, it's almost a, to tie this into more, it's almost like a transgender argument. He's like, they're not recognizing me as,
what I am, which is not a Vulcan. I don't want to be a Vulcan like this. And it's like they're forcing me to adopt to what they see as like the real me, basically. And his argument that he's pushing back against the Vulcans, you'd think would get some sympathy from Archer, who hates the Vulcan High Command, but he doesn't care about it. So it's all disconnected.
Yeah. It's just like the stuff that he was saying, I was into, like you said, like that stuff was interesting. And I, even though he was talking about stuff that I didn't know what it had to do with anything at that point. But yeah, it's the rest of the episode is just so like, I can't tell you how much I dislike people who talk about characters and events that you don't ever see in such like, earnest import, melodramatic, and like give you like plot points that revolve around this stuff where it's like, oh no, what you didn't know is that the name that I mentioned 10 minutes ago actually did this instead of this, even though we didn't see that. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm playing Final Fantasy Tactics right now, replaying it, and the game story is full of that. It's full of plot of character names that you never meet the characters, so you just have to remember them, sort of like the mind needs to associate an image of a person with a name for you to really latch onto it. Otherwise, it's just like, this is just meaningless information. But yeah, the entire motivations of these characters is told to you through those two talking to each other. So you don't get any sense of where the betrayal comes from or what Minos is actually thinking. It's just name after name of him looking like this person and the Vulcan High Command wants him. So that the whole thing that pins you to this is that you're supposed to feel attachment to Paul needing to do a job, but you don't understand whether or not the job she's doing is a good thing or a bad thing because you have no insight into Minos whatsoever as a character outside of him just talking about it.
And they like you were saying at the beginning, the other thing they do that they do all the time in Enterprise is they explicitly hold information back in order to create this false sense of mystery. And then when they reveal the answer to the mystery, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't make it any more interesting. Where like in this episode, if she had just been completely upfront with Archer and laid everything out, I think that makes for a more interesting episode. Because now at least you understand the headspace T'Pol is in as far as her wavering as far as what to do with this guy. And so it helps you narratively grasp on to what they're trying to tell you instead of just having her freaking out for 25 minutes. And then she's like, oh, I shot this guy and I didn't know if I should have shot him. So I don't know if this guy's a bad guy. It's like, well, if you told us that at the start, at least we would have an inroad to the story you're trying to tell, but you deliberately made it, held back the information and tried to create intrigue based on nothing.
Yeah. It would have eliminated your, I had the same problem where if you don't know why T'Pol is conflicted, it seems like it's a romantic or a mentorship relationship. Like she had that fallen hero episode where it's like she was upset in that one because she had a personal relationship with this person that it wasn't a great episode, but it impacted that. So here, by not explaining that, you go in thinking T'Pol has some personal thing with this guy. This guy is important, but it's not about that guy. That guy could have been anybody, and she would still have the same problem with it.
Yeah, he just happened to be the other guy who was there. Yeah, when she shot that dude.
Yeah,
I thought it was like he was some super dangerous whatever. Yeah, like they either had some sort of relationship or he was just that dangerous.
Yeah.
But no, he just happened to be the other guy who was there, so it's just like personally damaging to her to deal with it. It's strange to me that that T'Pol, out of everybody, seems to be the one so often keeping crucial information from everybody else that would really help everybody else understand what was going on.
Yeah. Fits with the Vulcans of this series, though. Like flawed, if you want to say it's a flawed thing, that does seem to be, the Vulcans don't consider it worthwhile to tell people things unless it's necessary. I would argue T'Pol doesn't tell people stuff that is necessary to continue on.
Like, if you want to just go from like a Vulcan logical standpoint, it's like, is there anything more logical than explaining to Archer why you need him to come with you on this mission?
Right.
It's like, here's what happened. Here's the situation. I don't know if I can make this decision on my own because of where my headspace is.
Yeah, I need an impartial third party here to help me figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, well, and they do it throughout the whole it's not even, it's almost like they realize they're doing it too.
Yeah.
Because they can't tell Archer about anything. And then Trip is asking what's going on. And he doesn't even tell Trip after they're done. There's a lot of weird stuff going on.
They might have to bring this story back at a future point. We can't have Trip knowing.
And even what was up with there was a certain point where T'Pol's trying to convince Archer to go with her. And he's like, so the Vulcan High Command wants you to go, and she's like, no, this is an order from Starfleet. He's what? Like I wasn't tracking that either. So it was Starfleet that sent her off to get this guy?
No, I think it's just a technicality thing. So the Vulcan High Command wants her to do that. The Vulcan High Command asked or told, however you want to look at it, told Starfleet, the Admiral, to order Archer to bring T'Pol to that place.
Oh.
So they have to it's just like a level of technical chain of command stuff where they have to tell Archer to do something, and she knew about it first because the Vulcan High Command told her, knowing that they were going to be able to tell Starfleet what to do.
Sure. I mean, point is this, it's all just like piling on these technical things that doesn't really help your story at all.
Yep. Yeah. And the keeping it a mystery, right?
I always find hilarious and can't really get behind when the answer to a story problem is, well, what if we put more technical jargon on it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, as long as we explain the paperwork involved in this trip, then everybody's going to be on board. So, no, that's not really how these things.
The thing about it is that it's confused enough, but there is a way to sort of thread this needle, or at least you can cut out things to make it a little bit better. So T'Pol not telling Archer anything at the start only makes sense if Minos's revelation that the Vulcans have been interfering with other planets is the linchpin to this whole story, right? Where the Vulcan High Command is like, Archer and Starfleet can't know about this because this is not on the up and up, what the Vulcans are doing to this other planet, right? Mm-hmm. That point, it makes sense that T'Pol can't tell him. But that's not the concern, because Minos tells them that immediately when he sees them. Like, there's no revelation that this is a big deal. None of the characters even treat this like it's a big deal. It's just like, yeah, the Vulcans interfere with other planets. That's just kind of what they do. You clarify that by just either cutting that out or making it the focal point of what your actual plot is. It's just, I think that T'Pol's story here is supposed to be the central thing. And I don't think that there is a good enough focus on T'Pol, what she's either going through or why she feels this way or why it's this horrible of a breakdown, or on the resolution where she as a character admits in the script she needs Archer to help her do this, so she can't even come to grips with it. And then it ends with Archer standing over behind her, whispering in her ear, shoot this motherfucker. Yeah. Shoot him in the back and take him down. And then they do. And it's this continuing weakness of writing T'Pol, where I don't feel like T'Pol is developing independently of anything. It's not like she's sort of got her own agency in a lot of sense. She's just she needs Archer to tell her what to do, and Archer knows for some reason. It's just so strange.
Yeah, it's it
terrible
almost feels
T'Pol
like,
episode. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it almost feels like to me this should have been. I think what probably should have happened to really make the story they're trying to tell be as effective as possible is T'Pol explains in some way or another to Archer what's going on and why she needs him to come down to the planet with her. They do what they're doing, X, Y, and Z. The guy breaks out. First of all, when the guy sets the bar on fire and then, oh my God. So he sets the bar on fire by knocking a candle over and is going to burn himself to death. But then in order to save him from burning, they unhook him from both handcuffs so he can run away. And he's gone because both handcuffs are on the ground. T'Pol, at the very least, is a terrible police officer. And then they show this exterior shot of where they are, which is like a bar burning on the side of a mountain with like this very limited amount of space before it drops off into a ravine where all these ships are parked.
Yeah.
And then they run outside and they're like, where could he possibly? He could be anywhere. It's like, no, there's two ships left in the parking lot. He's not in your ship. He's probably in his ship. Anyway, when he escapes, I think what should happen is T'Pol should become separated from Archer. So she should end up isolated with this guy. So she now has to go one-on-one with this guy and make her own decision about what's going on, independent of Archer telling her to shoot him in the back or whatever. Because that's ultimately what's going on here, right? Is she's brought this safety mechanism, this crutch with her. So in order for her to really get into the meat of what they're trying to deal with, you got to take the crutch away. Mm-hmm. She has to be presented with the thing she's afraid of, which they never really do, like to a satisfying degree, which is why I'm talking about like they don't go all the way with it. It's like, imagine the episode of Deep Space Nine where Kira is interrogating the light in the dark, the one with the deformed Cardassian that blew up at a bomb or whatever. Yeah. Imagine that episode, but like Cisco is there the whole time saying to Kira, "No, you're doing the right thing. You should kill this guy." He's giving her the questions that she's supposed to ask. He's like, "Ask him about the bomb that blew up." He's like, "What about that? Yeah, bomb. Yeah, that would be terrible." Yeah. It's just very non-committal to the stories that it wants to tell. And I think one of the things that's really starting to come out in this show, and I wonder if it's a symptom of the time, or if it's a symptom of what you're saying, where the guys running the show aren't really into it. The first thing, they let somebody else write a damn episode, because their name, Brannon, Braga, and Moore, Berman, their names are on every single script. And it's like, if you back it up a little bit, maybe you'll get some new stuff coming out. But it all feels very, very safe ultimately. Like they don't take a lot of narrative or thematic chances. And that's across the whole series. And I think that's probably one of the biggest, subtlest failings of the show, is that they play everything so safe. Yeah. No, it's it feels to the detriment of your show, because an episode like this, where you could theoretically get into some really interesting murky waters ethically or morally, they're like, we can't do that. We got to make sure we show that he's smuggling he's wrong. Energy drinks. Yeah. So shooting him in the back doesn't seem like she made the wrong decision. Like, imagine I think the show improves drastically if you just never tell if she made the right decision or not. You know, like if she shoots him in the back and they bring him back, and like that's the tag at the end, is her being like, I know I made the right decision at this moment, but I don't know if I made the right decision in a larger sense or something. Yeah. I think the episode is so bad that even those fixes only gets you halfway to something. Sure. No, I'm not saying it makes it an A+ episode, but you know, it gives you something. Yeah. Because T'Pol's main problem, or T'Pol's problem here, is that she feels guilty about killing this guy, and then that is supposed to trickle into whether or not Minos has done something wrong. Mm-hmm. It's more, the only way that I think this episode is worth telling is if that Minos's rejection of being Vulcan is the central focal point of this. That's like the only thing that's really remarkable or different about this. And to have that sort of, that pairs against what you want to consider to be, at this point, it's weak, but it's like T'Pol's development is to be her humanization of spending time with humans. They keep mentioning this. She's spent the most time with a human that a Vulcan ever has. She's becoming more human. I think Archer has a line about something like that. And she's seeing this character who's rejected that is something that at least piques her interest, or it does something within her. And then you can tie in this whole, if you want to do like a criminal aspect to it or something, but it doesn't focus on T'Pol's inner conflict. Like the conflict is misplaced onto the, she feels bad about killing the other guy, but the other guy's not in this episode. I don't give a fuck about that guy. Like, who cares? So if the whole thing is her feeling bad and she doesn't want to kill the other guy, you can fix that by setting your phaser to stun and shooting him in the back, or you can recognize that the actual conflict within T'Pol is more inner than that. I mean, she's obsessing about killing this one guy, which is then translating into her being frozen on whether or not to even bring this guy in for questioning. Like, it's not like she's been sent there to specifically murder him.
Right.
She's just bringing him back, which, I mean, I think there's probably dialogue in there where it's like, oh, well, if you bring me back, it's as good as a death sentence. Or I'm sure it's in there. I don't remember it, but
implication being that T'Pol knows she has to kill him, but that's not the case because T'Pol never is forced to kill him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it's a weird 1-to-1 to try and make where it's like she's concerned about killing one guy, but in this situation, she's very much not doing that. So this is like it's like if you killed one person and then you were afraid to even like go knock on this other person's door with your warrant afterwards just because you killed somebody else. Yeah, it's like if he opens the door, I'm gonna have to shoot him. I have no, that's not how it works.
Right. It's like if
it might be at this point. I don't know, but
if you were terrified of going to the supermarket, and it's like you're just terrified to go to the supermarket, and they're like, all right, here's a plot where you go to a gas station, and you just think about being scared about going to a supermarket. It's like, well, who cares? Like, I'm not at a supermarket. This is not the same decision. That
they
to me
both
is
sell beef jerky, Wes.
Maybe it's just selling things is just triggering you enough that you'd be upset by it or something. But yeah, that's
crippling fear of commerce.
Is this influenced by 9/11? Is there something to Archer's? If it is influenced by 9/11, what's the relationship here about just bring him in, right? You could assume that maybe this is an Osama bin Laden reference. It's like, don't think about it, just do it. But at that point, I don't know what that is saying comfortably about. Is the show doubting? Like, if you want to continue this analogy, is the show doubting that bin Laden is responsible? Like, I don't see any positive correlation you're doing here between 9/11 and this, besides Archer being extremely pro do what you're told. But he's the hero of the show, and then they do what they're told they do the thing that they were sent to do. I don't know. Do you see any 9/11-ish aspect to this? Because this came out in 2002, so this is like right before the invasion of Iraq and stuff like that.
Maybe a little bit. It seems like it's kind of a stretch, given the stuff that they're dealing with. Because T'Pol shooting someone and feeling bad about it, I don't know if that stuff really has. If it is meant to be that way, I don't think it's a very well thought out metaphor.
I see it more through Archer than anything. I don't see it through T'Pol. I see it more through Archer's bizarre insistence that they
got to do what you got to do.
You got to don't think about it. Yeah. Just do it. Just do it. We were told to do it. Just do it. Yeah. And him being a hero of the show, who is also right by it because the guy has biological weapons and they did the right thing by shooting him and taking him in.
They played this episode. I don't know if you knew this, but they played this episode on the floor of Congress right before they had the vote to whether or not they should invade Iraq. So shouldn't the story here be not that T'Pol killed someone, so now she's gun shy about getting this guy? Shouldn't it be that she didn't shoot this guy and letting him go caused the deaths of 100 people or something?
Right.
Like, because it feels like the problem here should be she is coming here with one thing in mind, which is to kill this guy. But she is not afraid to do that because whether or not, if you go by what I just said, she doesn't know if she can do it. She doesn't know if she can pull the trigger on this guy. But if she doesn't pull the trigger on this guy, more people are going to die. Or you can flip it and I don't like. It feels like life or death needs to be the option here, but it's not, because there is, and because if life or death is the option, ultimately, then Archer can be like, the guns have a stun setting, T'Pol, and she's like, oh, well, shit, I didn't really, like if life and death is the initial option, then the solution to your problem is you find a third solution that doesn't involve killing him,
right?
Which you get to by working through your issues.
Minos is too small of a character in that case. Like, Minos is too, if you'd have to increase his influence in that he becomes a bin Laden-esque figurehead to something that's not a small-time cartel of selling arms or something. Like, he has to have a larger ideological impact on things to make it like taking him out is necessary because of like the influence that he peddles. But here, the choice is so small, and it's because it's not about him. It's about T'Pol being scared to stun him. Like you just run into that problem over and over again.
Yeah. I think this one has a lot of, ultimately it's hard to find a tack to take with it because there's so many conflicting things all happening.
Yeah.
That I don't even think they really know what they're trying to say about anything.
Can I talk about a scene I did like?
Sure.
The one good scene in this is I did like Trip's lunch with Phlox and Reed, mostly because I like when Enterprise gets sort of silly and weird. And the thing about, he's like, well, we have to inoculate people. Are there side effects? Yes, it's diarrhea. He's like, ooh, I don't want to make that call. It's such a small, weird, minor issue. And Phlox is like, well, you don't want to hold off on inoculating people. We got to make a decision real soon. It's that whole, besides the fact that the Trip subplot falls apart where all the Vulcan has to do is tell him a score in a water polo game. I thought that they were scared that the Vulcans were going to be like, where is everybody? After I thought the ticking clock was that the Vulcans were going to show up and they're ahead of schedule and Trip has to delay them over and over, but they're just like, you're Captain Archer? They could have, why did they even need to talk to Archer? Just be like, give Archer a message that your water polo game is over. There's no reason to talk to him. It's so bizarre. And Trip is third in command on this ship. Why the fuck is he so nervous about making decisions about anything?
Trip has never more seemed like George W. Bush than when confronted with public health and infrastructure questions.
It's strange. Your favorite part? Did you have a favorite part?
I think the Bruce Davison stuff, his monologues are great.
Yeah,
he was
great.
Really good. It was arguably the best acting they've had on the show. Full stop. Because he was like, I think in his mind he's like, I have a potential. I could be the next Khan. Whereas it's like, no, you're not coming back, bud. Because he was really going for it. He was either that or someone pulled him aside and were like, hey, none of this stuff makes any sense. We really need you to do some heavy lifting here.
Yes. Yeah.
He's like, no problem.
What's my motivation? Who cares? No, he's
that movie where I love the rats. That was a good one.
He's very good. He's probably the best part of this outside of that little Trip scene or whatever. Yeah, it's a good character kind of wasted with a lack of motivation or lack of anything interesting to go on with him. I
did also really like when they first get to the bar. Oh no, actually, I will tell you what my favorite scene is. Well, when they first get to the bar and T'Pol is like in line for drinks or something, and she turns around and he's there, and she's like, "Wah!" and then jumps out of the way.
He's hiding underneath the bar.
Hiding underneath the table. Way to take the mystery out of your villain by showing him like scurrying under the table,
cowering in fear underneath the table. The seatbelts around the feet to avoid the acid was also a. Or just like, you can't go out there. There's acid. There's a quarter of an inch of acid on the ground.
This acid can't burn through basic nylon strapping. No, my favorite scene, my favorite thing about the episode actually, because it stood out so much for an episode of Enterprise, was the bar, because they did a lot of alien makeup work and they were not half-assing any of it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work going on there. And I think that was part of what was tricking me into liking the episode at the beginning, because when they got there, I was like, why would they put this much work into this stuff if the rest of the episode was going to be shitty? Yeah. And then in retrospect, I was like, well, maybe they put a lot of work into the aliens because the rest of the episode was shitty.
Yeah, yeah. No, Enterprise does that well. It does the Mos Eisley primitive Federation world stuff that they're running into that you assume has kind of been stamped out by the time of Next Generation because you never see it at that point. So it's this sort of like seedy underbelly of the universe still exists in the Enterprise era.
I think it would have been great. Well, I guess they've been to Risa at this point, so maybe it's old hat. But I was going to say, I think it would have been great if you're going to use Mayweather, to have Mayweather be like taken aback at a bar full of so many different kinds of aliens, because in the show they've only run into like 6 different kinds at this point.
Yeah.
But they've been to Risa. They've seen. Oh, that's the other thing. It kept throwing me off that this rundown shootout scenario happened on Risa. Because every time she's like, it's back what happened on Riza. And was she on vacation?
Right.
She tracked these guys down when they were at 2 and shot one of them in the leg.
He has some dumb line too. He's like, how could such tragedy happen on the happiest place in the world? Who would have thought that this murder could happen at Disneyland? Terrible. All right, let's
like the beginning of Face Off where John Travolta and his son get shot while they're on a carousel.
Yep.
Just
never
like that.
Never forget. Keeps coming around. Let's take a break. We'll play a clip from the episode.
The scar off. He gets rid of the scar at the end of the movie because he's moved past the trauma.
He's healed.
Yes.
We'll play a clip from the episode. We'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll read some patron thoughts and give our final thoughts about the 7th.
His face off.
Captain?
Why did you want me here?
Because I trust you.
Then trust me. You were sent to apprehend him, not to judge him.
All right. Thank you very much for listening, guys. If you want to support the show, in addition to listening, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-file. It's the best way to do so. You get extra podcasts, extra videos, extra commentary, extra polls, all that good stuff. Patreon.com/thepensky-file. As always, our Captain tier supporters get a special thank you. Special thank you goes to Christian Pouch, Tarek Latif, Chris Tinsley, Mike Burnett, Sean Garnell, Doomsday, Joint Mango, Matt Cutler, Ben Douglas, Neil Brennan, Cal Barrett, Samuel Custer, Nick Sergey, Bradley Killens, Matthew Ross, Grun Benler, Nathan Elliott, Eric Johnson, Andrew Chirlaw, Grim Santo, Poindexter G, Dwayne Hackett, Jordan Cooper, Derek Zajac, Russell Elledge, Kevin Reyes, Vol13 Hero, Stefan Minton, Darth Moss, H28, Mad Curry 6, Jacob123, Mike Harris, Jakey's Gamer, Patrick Seba, Captain Brazen, Kevin Lowry, Eric Santuan, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Timothy Cooley. Thank you very much. I would run across acid with seatbelts strapped around my feet for you guys. I think that's it. So let's do some Patreon.
Isn't it funny how that doesn't become an issue in the last third of the episode when everybody's got to leave and run to their ships?
It's never an issue. It's a weird thing that they even include it. I don't know. It's just so strange.
It's
Patreon
such
comments.
a weird manufactured impediment to what they're doing. Well, they got to get this guy off, so they have to get him. They have to get him off the planet. So we got to bring him back to the ship. Okay, well, we should make sure they can't get to the ship. What should we do? I don't know. Maybe they spray the tarmac with acid.
Yeah, have you guys ever de-iced a plane? It's a huge pain in the ass. You're sitting around on the tarmac for hours. Yeah. So, do we look like a prison? So we'll just chain him to the table. And that'll be enough.
Every night to eat the snow off the ground, we cover it in rattlesnakes.
It's another, in another episode where the conflict, the Enterprise just doesn't build on its conflict. So the conflict is there's no prison where they can store this guy. They're in a Mos Eisley criminal bar underbelly place. They bring him into the bar. The only thing they can do is hold him in the bar until then. There is no conflict with any other criminals through that. Right. There's no one there who's like, who are you? Like, we don't care for bounty hunters or we don't care for whatever the hell you guys are. Like, there's no conflict or problem with them just chaining him to the table and having to sit there and wait for their plane to be de-iced. It's really strange. Right. It's really weird. Yeah. Patron comments. If you're a patron, you can leave thoughts about upcoming episodes and we read them. Thomas Darnell says, the 7th, I like a lot of things about this episode, but the Vulcans are way off model here. A matter of honor. I can't tell if Archer's response, how very Vulcan, is supposed to be lampshading how ridiculous that sounds or to sell it. T'Pol's trauma seems excessive, but taking it as read, where is the logic in ever exposing her to any part of that again? I like the trust between Archer and T'Pol, and I like the quiet competence of Travis taking up their slack. I don't get why Tucker, senior officer, department head, and second officer, is so uncomfortable being in command. It's a weird storyline, although I do like that he has the same reaction to underlings trying to talk business at the captain's mess as Archer did. It's a 3 for me.
I noticed the honor thing too. That stood out, and I was like, that
doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't seem like a Vulcan thing to me.
No, doesn't make any sense.
Because that's the other thing too. It's like there's no personal connection or anything aside from the fact that she was trying to get this guy once and now she's got to finish the job. I guess that's the only thing. But I do agree that it seems illogical to send the person who's been traumatized by it after. It's just not effective. I mean, to send the person who's traumatized and also
what the hell is it? It's like you as an audience member have just been told that T'Pol used to have this job. You know, it's not like it's some backstory that you're exposed to. It's just T'Pol's like, yeah, 17 years ago I used to work security, and this one guy got away. I got to go get him. It's like, nah, who cares?
I also hate that stuff when it never comes back. You know, like you could do that with anybody. You could take Malcolm, you could take Reed aside and have an episode where he comes in and he's like, Archer, 15 years ago, before you ever knew me, I worked undercover on Klingon. I was the only human who had ever been there. It's like, what?
Right.
This hasn't come up before, and it's never going to come up again. So sure, whatever.
Matt Ross says, the 7th, this episode makes no sense from the sleeper agent angle of the Vulcans to the fact that clearly the Vulcan they are looking for is obviously hiding biological weapons, and then Trip's utter indecisiveness. You're not going to immediately act on a medical issue or any other ship business, and when Archer, T'Pol, and Mayweather come back, Archer still doesn't know the water polo score. Most of this episode, I can't really tell what the hell is going on with those weird flashbacks and misdirection. The low-talking sluggishness, shadows, and general malaise makes this a slow and boring grind. Warp me out of here. Poindexter says, much like T'Pol, I had forgotten most of this episode. We're getting back to the bland, not very good, but also not really terrible episodes. I disagree. Editor's commentary. The story just doesn't engage me, despite a good guest performance and a very good performance from Jolene Blaylock. If you were to ask me my opinion, I'd have to say I'll get back to you.
It's maybe a good performance by Jolene Blaylock, but it's not a good performance as T'Pol.
It's a poor character showing.
Yeah, but I did think she was good. I thought the scenes that she had with Bruce Davidson were good.
Latte Librarian says, I found myself asking why a lot during this episode, and I don't think I ever got an answer, except to the question of whether Trip is ready to be captain. He is not. 2 biotoxins out of 5.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me about these episodes or these stories where they just pull on stuff where they're explaining the real events of shit that happened off screen with people that you never heard of and blah blah blah. The thing that always bothers me about that is it never gets down to what the story is about, right? All that stuff is ultimately trappings and like explaining stuff away, but it very rarely gets to the heart of what the theme of the story is. Like, what is your story really about? It's not about all that stuff. It's about what's happening here and now with the characters doing what they're doing. And excuse me, I feel like that's always the case and always should be the case. Like the key to your story should very rarely be stuff that happened 25 years ago being viewed through a new lens, unless that's the ultimate theme or whatever. But it's I feel like it's very easy to get caught up in that stuff and make it seem like, oh, that's the story, right? It's like, no, that's not the story. The story is the characters you have and the action they're taking now, not them musing on stuff that happened 15 years ago.
Yeah. Kyle Barrett says, the 7th, an absolute insult and a disgrace. Chef serves bangers and mash with no gravy. How disgustingly dry does he want this meal? And don't get me started on the horrendous paste-like mashed potatoes. You got to fluff those bitches with a masher, and I bet that bastard didn't even add butter or milk. It makes me sick. 0 out of 5. The food thing, Enterprise's food obsession is really strange. I don't know if that's supposed to be that this is a prequel and we need to see them eating things, but when Arch is like, T'Pol goes in Arch's quarters at the start, he's like, would you like some toast?
I'm just I'm continually or continuously, either one, amazed at the variety of menu they have on this ship.
Yeah,
like
Chef's busy.
I feel like they should be eating like MREs exclusively.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a replicator. I think you brought it up at one point. It's like, so do they just have like turkeys on board that they're killing for this stuff? Or
Chef,
do they have a big walk-in freezer like in The Shining that they keep all their shit in or something?
Chef's whole day is taken up by making the 3 personalized meals for Reed, Phlox, and Trip.
Right.
Like, how much time does this guy have to be throwing together all this stuff? He makes 3 different meals. It's just everyone gets the same thing. We're making a big party platter. Everyone is having gnocchi and meatballs or whatever.
I actually don't know if you knew, but right now, one of the things they did predict is that right now in the military, everybody on the ship can ask for whatever they want, and then they'll get it.
Right.
That's just how the military works. Is they've got their menu is bottomless, and you can one guy can get spaghetti, the other guy can get ice cream, a third guy can get a cheeseburger. Yeah, no problem.
It's whatever you want. The skies are limitless. Woodrow says, the seventh Archer is kind of a dick to start off this episode, gloating and taunting until you bow to his iron will or becoming his captain's traits. 2 space Gatorades out of 5. And then the final comment, Neil Brennan. Having never seen it before, I will forever associate Enterprise with the awful, awful year that is 2020. That seems fitting. I muted this about halfway through and made some paprika sweet potato wedges, watched the viral Brad Pitt Jennifer Aniston video, and fed my dog his dinner. I came back and it was still on and still boring. 0 bangers out of 5. Honestly, not sure I can keep going, guys. Can't we just rewatch DS9 or Battlestar or The Expanse or anything? Sweet Lord, anything.
If you want, you can start leaving comments based on what you think the episode is about.
No.
That would be fun for me anyway.
That's it. Thank you, patrons, for leaving your thoughts and your comments. Stretch. I tend to agree with Neil, certainly, and Kyle 0 out of 5, I think, is related just to the lack of gravy, but I will take him on, take it as a serious score for the episode. Yeah, I think it's an accomplishment when we run into one of the worst Star Trek episodes I think I've ever seen. And this is up there. This is another 1 for me. This is like a 1 with an asterisk because I want to remember where I was when I saw, like, we were unhappy with Marauders last week, right? And Marauders is a 1 because it's like, this is just so perfunctory. Like, this is just so goddamn boring. This one is boring and makes no sense. It makes no sense. Nothing that happens in here makes any sense, and it's terrible. It's just so awful. It's worse than Marauders somehow.
I was actually going to retroactively change my Marauders rating to a 2 because that is infinitely better of an episode than this. However, I'm going to stick with a 1 because honestly, if I was going to choose
for Marauders, you're going to stick. You're going to stick. Yeah. Okay.
I'm also giving this one a 1.
Sure.
But if I'm going to stick with a 1 for Marauders because if I were to go back and have to choose between which ones to watch again, I would choose this one 10 times out of 10.
Okay.
Because I found Marauders is just so boring and trite, whereas this one, at least, you've got Bruce Davidson playing jazz over here while everybody else is playing the recorder in school marching band.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree with you about that. I think that my score is just totally dependent on the construction of this as a TV episode, and I think that Marauders is just it's boring as hell, but it's like functional in the easiest way possible. Yeah, this one is confused. I think it actually damages characters like DePaul and Archer in it. Like what they choose to do here doesn't make any sense, and it's not true to what they are. I don't think it opens up these whole can of worms about what DePaul and her mind wipe and stuff like that. None of this is ever going to matter. It's just a really bad episode.
This episodes like this are why I don't think I could ever be an actor on a show like this, because this is one where I would get the script and go like, can we have a talk about this? Like if I would be like Mayweather or something where I'm like not one of the leads, but I'm on the show consistently, and I'd be getting this thing going like, hey, I have some notes. Can I talk to where's Brannon? I need to talk to him. Then I would be very quickly fired. I think.
Well, they back then they probably didn't have. They were probably given printed versions of the scripts. I imagine now you'd probably send computer versions or something so that you can look at it. But I'm sure actors go in and Control F their character's name to be like, oh man, how much is in this? Mayweather probably got this one. He's like, oh my god, this is a Mayweather episode. Yeah. Oh, I have 2 lines of dialogue. My name is just all over the scene descriptions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I hate keep using this as an excuse, but obviously they're making 27 episodes of hour-long television. They got a lot of work to do. They can't all be fastballs over the plate, but this feels like this series is starting to feel like when a team is specifically trying to tank a season so they can get a high draft pick or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, we're trying, kinda. We're showing up to play. But we're not trying to break any records or win any championships here.
Yeah. No,
this show is the San Diego Padres. No, the Pirates, the Pittsburgh Pirates of 1990 through 2010.
Yeah, it's the Knicks of currently. It's got like semi got cachet, but it's just like no, we'd rather not be good, I guess.
Yeah. The Cleveland Browns, where they keep replacing their quarterback and hoping for the best, and it just never works.
Thank you very much, guys, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patreon.com/thepenskyfile, and otherwise you can go to thepenskyfile.com for all of the other shows that are happening. Rotten Horror continues, Badass continues, Star Trek continues, Lower Decks coverage continues, and all that stuff. I guess that's pretty much it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
This past week we had a new Rotten Horror Picture Show. We were talking about Candyman, right?
Yes.
Which is fun. Tied you over until the next one comes out next year. We've got a new Badass coming out this week. Don't remember what episodes, but I'm sure they're good. And we're pushing on Patreon to try to get reach a goal so Amanda and I can do some Patreon horror content for you guys. So if you wanna help us out, you can head over to patreon.com/thepenskyfile and check out what we're trying to do over there.
Yep. It's a goal, monetary goal a month. Once we get to that goal, they'll start putting out a podcast a month. So good news for everybody there. It'll be at the $5 tier if that helps motivate anybody who's on the lower tier if they want to get bumped up to that, but you'll increase your podcasts per month. That's about it. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. I think that's it. The next episode is something like the Singularity, something like that. Is it the Communicator? The Communicator is the next one. The eighth episode. Just get cute with that at that point. Thank you very much. Let us know what you thought about the 7th, and I think we're all done. We'll see you next time with the Communicator. See ya.